Dirt Trax is sponsored by Can-Am. The ride says it all. Polaris, the world leader in off-road innovation. And by Yamaha. Conquer Outdoors.
Over the years, we've done a lot of shootouts here at Dirt Trax, and generally speaking, they all follow the same pattern and layout. Today, we're shooting out Polaris's RZR 900 and Can-Am's all-new Maverick Trail DPS, and we're gonna do things a little bit different.
Instead of telling you about all the details of each vehicle, we're gonna let you use the internet to come up with all of those answers on your own and give you something that's a little bit more quantitative.
We're gonna look at our impressions after a number of days of testing the vehicles back-to-back, side-by-sides, and then we're gonna give you the results at the very end of what we think makes the best 50-inch side-by-side. Our first comparison is something I've wanted to do for a long time. It's a time trial over a 1-mile section of trail, and basically, you and I are just gonna rip these things as fast as we possibly can back-to-back and see which one's faster.
High-speed trail, about 1 pickup truck wide. So it's nice open trail, not too rock strewn, so we can actually haul, 3, 2, go at it, 1, hit it as hard as we can and still be safe and find out what comes out on top.
We had a guy at the start line and he was flagging us. We had a guy, well, you or I, at the finish line with our stopwatches, and we said go, hit start. You went, I went as fast as we could go, and when you crossed that finish line, airborne as usual, we stopped the stopwatch.
133.18. This is our best idea yet. This is so much fun.
As much as this is about science, it's also about brothers competing against each other, and I want to be fast.
I take the learning key out of it now. 3, 2, 1, go. Ooh, he saved a lot of time on that one. This is going to be the tell-all. This is the truth coming out right now.
I was convinced after my first little bit in the Polaris that I was going to be significantly slower just after driving it back to the start line.
I didn't feel as comfortable sitting in it. I felt like I was way up too high.
You were 1 second faster in the Polaris than you were in a Can-Am. And I think I was like 75% faster 1 second. It was like so close that it wasn't even worth arguing about.
No.
He was fast. He was really fast. 131.15 on your first run.
Was that the fastest yet?
The feeling was definitely...
That the Polaris felt better.
Yeah, it did, it did.
The Can-Am felt more comfortable on the interior, but the Polaris felt better in drivability. You actually hauled on it, you pushed on the gas, and you were going through the corners. It broke loose and slid predictably. The steering was right where you wanted it, and the throttle response, I think we both felt, it got to maximum speed so much faster than the Can-Am did. You could just feel it.
Yeah. But it highlighted the fact that when you're pushing these vehicles as hard as you can, they are pretty much equal.
Yeah. So the second test was a drag race, and this was another, not real world, but when you're trying to put two vehicles head to head, you kind of have to have very baseline settings that you know are not going to be variable.
And drag racing, for me, the reason I like it is because it's something people are constantly telling us we should do. How come you don't drag race them? That's Facebook, that's YouTube constant comments. So we did.
Yeah, we did 750 feet, one guy flagging to make sure that reaction times weren't off. We switched vehicles, we did it back to back, and we pretty much saw the same results for both of us.
The Polaris is doing surprisingly well today. Not that it shouldn't, it's just that we kind of expected the extra 100 cc's of the Maverick to, what's that? You can't see it, but the first run you pulled away from me the whole time. That run, about 3/4 of the way down, I was creeping up on you.
Okay. From the first run to the last run, everything was almost identical. The Polaris would jump out and it would hold that for about 3/4 of the track.
500 feet.
And then the Can-Am would slowly creep up on it. That was consistent. That was 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. It was pretty much identical over and over and over again.
In 4-wheel drive, the Can-Am was actually slower. In 2-wheel drive, the Can-Am was better and would lay rubber just a little bit. But it's kind of strange because the Polaris would not lay rubber. It's 200 pounds lighter, which you'd almost think that it would lay rubber easier, but it doesn't.
I think that we have proved that 100 cc's doesn't give you a whole lot extra, really.
The next major thing we wanted to test is something that in a 50-inch side-by-side is way more important than in any other wider, bigger side-by-side, and is turning radius. And this one was probably the biggest, most obvious result.
Yeah, with a longer wheelbase on the Can-Am, you're going to have a larger turning radius. It's just the way it's going to be. You sacrifice some things and you gain in other areas. Yep. Even with the rear diff being able to be unlocked, you're still not going to get the same
There's no significant difference, and the Polaris was, I mean, in light of things, it was significantly smaller turning radius.
Yeah.
So it's something to consider. It's not the be-all and end-all of the vehicle, but the Polaris definitely was a tighter turning vehicle. So that's something you need to know.
And with an unlocking rear diff, you probably won't tear up your grass, which is kind of nice. So that's something to be said.
Dirt Trax is sponsored by Princess Auto, a unique world of equipment, tools, and more.
The final thing we needed to do is the most important test of all with these two vehicles. Yep. They are trail vehicles. They are not race vehicles. Nope. So we needed to take them on a real world, everyday, normal trail ride, which is what we did. Yep. We went out to a section of trail that we're very familiar with, and we rode back and forth, back to back, switching vehicles constantly, and just continued to ride the same trail. The results, I think, are the most telling of all, doing that portion of the testing, and I think they're the most important for people watching.
For me, suspension definitely goes to the Can-Am. I mean, it's comfortable. It feels like it's using its travel. It does what you want it to do. However, it feels less sporty. It feels more trailable, but it definitely feels less sporty.
The Polaris felt very harsh. It felt like the suspension wasn't really moving that much.
Bouncing around all the
time.
But
in handling department, we both liked the Polaris better than the Can-Am. The Polaris was quicker handling, it was snappier, it was a little bit more predictable. The Can-Am was a little bit more lazy.
Polaris would go through a corner sideways predictably. The Can-Am didn't seem to want to break loose.
No.
It kind of like to stick to the ground.
When it did break loose, it almost felt like it was like, whoa, it's going on.
And it's longer. You notice that length when it does get sideways. It doesn't do the same thing the Polaris does. The Polaris feels much more nimble and light, and it is 200 pounds lighter.
And then the big one, of course, that we both 100% agree on was ergonomics.
Yeah, definitely goes to the Can-Am yet again. The interior of the Can-Am is so nice. The seat feels like it was designed for a rider by a rider.
Things like the dashboard are much higher quality, much nicer looking.
Even the shifter, the way you interact with the shifter and the steering wheel, they're rubberized instead of just being straight plastic. My gloves don't slip on them. The Can-Am feels like
I'm not going to say the
Polaris
is bad.
No.
It's not bad. And what I found is the harder you ride and the faster you ride it, the more you start to like the Polaris. But the Can-Am, when you get in it, you just go, oh, this is good. I think the Can-Am's motor is maybe a little bit more refined, but I really like the clutching on the Polaris better. I think the Polaris has a smoother power curve. It's got easier to modulate clutching. And then the biggest one for me is that drive-by-wire throttle on the Can-Am. The Polaris having a cable throttle makes it feel better. It just, you're connected to the motor, you feel what you're doing, response is instantaneous. I think overall, I just like the power package in the Polaris a lot better.
I'd say the same thing. I think that the Can-Am is more refined, it's smoother when it comes to vibrations, but it's interesting that 100 cc's less, yet again, seems to be the one that we are going to, and it's not for any reason other than it just does feel snappier, more responsive, and better.
So you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, which of these vehicles is the best value? Their MSRP is identical. I think my opinion is that this one has to go to the Can-Am because you get multiple modes, which is due to the drive-by-wire, but it is a feature. You're getting more refined interior, you're getting full doors. I mean, those things, you're getting an unlocking rear diff. Those are all things that
big benefit.
Maybe day to day, you're not gonna notice the doors you would, but the other things maybe you wouldn't, but they are included.
If you are a sport-oriented rider and you're going to take this thing down the road and maybe put wider A-arms and different tires and you want to be more sporty with it, probably the Polaris is going to be the one that responds better to that. If you're a trail rider, you're out doing what 50-inch trail riders do, and you want comfort and amenities and clean fit and finish and all of those things, the Can-Am, I think, takes the nod there.
I think because we both felt the Can-Am was the more realistic trail riding vehicle in a trail class, and I think the Can-Am takes it.
I think the Can-Am is the clear winner.
But I think what needs to be mentioned, Polaris is the oldest one of the bunch. I mean, this is the benchmark. This is what started the class. It started sport side-by-sides, period. It's been around the longest. It's the least updated and changed. Can-Am is brand new. Can-Am threw all of their effort, all of their money at that vehicle, and they came out just a hair above, which means the Polaris is a darn good ride.
Dirt Trax is sponsored by MVRP Power Sports. Race-inspired performance.
The mud is literally in our blood, man. That's what we love to do. We grew from playing in the front yard in mud holes with our Hot Wheels cars. We grew into engines and four-wheel drives and building off-road vehicles. And we built a passion for challenging ourselves against the elements. And so it's man versus machine, machine versus elements out here whenever you go mud riding. You know, coming from way back when we were little and enjoying mud riding, it's progressed into a passion that we've built a business around and we truly love. We've been mud riding for so long that it's truly a part of who we are, and it's where S3 Powersports has built their name is in the mud riding and down here in the South, hitting all these events and going out here with, you know, a new unit every year dropping at the biggest mud events. When we started getting into mud racing, it was blowing up crazy big, and it was amazing how fast it was growing. And so we said, you know what, this is part of what we already have going on. We're building these rigs for guys that are going racing them. Let's step into that role. Let's start racing our own. Going into 2015, Can-Am really got behind us and supported our program because we made such a strong showing. So with the help of Can-Am, we went out and won 6 championships in 2015 in mud racing. And so we got on the best units we could. They were dominating the mud riding. They were starting to be really strong and become dominant in the mud racing. And so our first choice and our go-to rigs for mud racing at S3 was the Can-Ams. So a lot of people wonder why the mud riding gets so much attention on social media, on the forums, and why there's such a big following. The people that do it are so passionate about it. And it's because mud riding is more of a culture and a social experience than it is just an event that you're going to. And so the people that do it, that are into it and build these big rigs to go out and mud ride, they're truly passionate about it. It takes a passionate person to take a brand new unit and stick it in, you know, steering wheel deep mud. But more than that, it's the entire experience. When you go out to one of these mud parks, man, it's people with a common interest gathering together, doing something that they love with their friends. They get to socialize. There's good stories afterwards. You know what I mean? It's a lot of riding together. There's some camaraderie and kind of a mutual understanding that goes along with mud riding that make people love it so much. It's not just a trend, man. It's a lifestyle that major manufacturers noticed, and Can-Am is blazing the trail with their XMR lineup. And you see that these guys are watching, man. They're paying attention to what's going on down here in the South. Myself and some of the guys at S3 Powersports were fortunate enough to get to check out this XMR Defender way back in the prototype stages, man, before it was even released in the development stages, man. We were involved in testing that, running the unit, critiquing it, and kind of every aspect as they get close to release date. And so we were truly blown away that one of the biggest things we learned about this was the Can-Am Smart-Lok technology, which is an amazing front differential that's progressed from kind of a limit slip to run in to where this thing is set up to be positive traction when you're down in a deep hole going slow and you're trying to lug out. And so it's amazing how little feedback you get through the steering wheel for a locker and how capable this rig is with the Smart-Lok technology in the front differential. And so that goes to show you how well Can-Am's listening to hardcore mud riders. It's amazing how well Can-Am has done to adapt their units across the board to have this Smart-Lok technology. And so you go out west in the rocks, man, where these guys are even rock crawling in Utah, out in Moab. They've got the X3 RC version with the Smart-Lok technology. That thing does phenomenal out there. It's amazing what that thing will climb. And then you come back down here into the South where we're at and you have the XMR Defender with the Smart-Lok. These guys have built this thing to work across the board phenomenally. And so there's 3 positions on it. You can run 2-wheel drive, you can run trail mode, and you can run lock position. And in lock position, that thing freaking gets down like it is, man. Huge advantage to the Smart-Lok technology is this thing is completely adaptive and it literally thinks for you. So when you're riding down the trail, depending on the input that you're giving it is how effective the locker system is. And so trail riding, no feedback, it drives awesome, but when you get it into a really bad situation, then the thing locks up and it really comes on when you need it. There's a few things that really matter to me when it comes to building a unit, and Can-Am has done a phenomenal job of catching on to those things. And so this thing comes out the box with 30-inch ITP Cryptic tires, 14-inch wheels, high clearance A-arms, front bumper with a 4,500-pound winch mounted on it, snorkeled intakes, and then the thing that's most important to me that is just an absolute killer add-on is the front Smart-Lok technology, which works flawlessly. And so to me, this thing literally is ready to rip straight out the box with all of the stuff that I would buy a unit and put on it anyways. Can-Am has already done it for you. And that's what's exciting to see, you know, how well they're watching the industry and what they're doing to push the envelope, man, and set the bar for OEMs high above what everybody else is doing. Can-Am's done a great job of that. There's no limit to what Can-Am's capable of, and for me as an off-roader and somebody that's passionate about it, the future is sure looking bright with Can-Am. Man, this Smart-Lok is far smarter than I ever thought, because I've tried to stump it with a couple of math questions, some really tough riddles, but this Smart-Lok is just, it's way too smart for me, man. This has been a great day riding, and this thing is unbelievable. Just a great day to get out and mud ride, man, and especially when there's a Can-Am involved, that's just fun for me.
Closed captioning of Dirt Trax is sponsored by Triton Trailer, built for adventure.
I know this is a bit of a generalization, but deep down inside, everybody wants to be a racer. Maybe not the taking risks part or the abuse suffered against your body while you're out on the track, but the excitement of speed, the adrenaline rush of acceleration, and the accomplishment of finishing what you started. Everybody dreams about that. This is exactly why Can-Am's Outlander X XC exists and why it's so popular. Yes, it is the industry's most race-ready 4x4 ATV out of the box, so obviously it appeals to and is a great choice for racers. But the largest portion of XXC sales are to people who will never enter a race, but want the rush of feeling like a racer. Can-Am really does do the best job at building this type of vehicle for this type of buyer as well. Their XXC and XRS models have always occupied the highest level of stock performance while still being accessible to almost anyone. But unlike others, the Outlander XXC is not just flashy graphics and paint. As I said earlier, this is a race-ready vehicle built with the rigors of GNCC-style cross-country racing in mind. What I wanted to know when I first got my hands on this 2018 model was what actually sets it apart from its lower-level brethren. The underpinnings of the XXC aren't any different than the others. Rotax's legendary 976cc V-twin produces Cummins-level bottom end, and there's nothing in the industry that sounds more intimidating. Power moves through Can-Am's expertly tuned CVT clutches to a shiftable 4x4 system that transfers it through a locked rear and Visco-Lock QE auto-locking front diff. The whole package is wrapped up in Can-Am's Outlander G2 chassis with AA arms up front supplying 9 inches of travel and TTA trailing arms out back giving you 9.3 inches of travel. So far, no surprises. But this is where things start to get more interesting. 9+ inches of front and rear travel is damped by a fully, and I do mean fully adjustable set of Fox 1.5 Podium Rc2 Shocks. How adjustable, you ask? High and low speed compression, rebound, and threaded preload adjustable. Doesn't really get any better than that. There are many secrets to great suspension. Overall design is obviously paramount, but even a great suspension design with crappy shocks is pretty much worthless. That's why the Fox setup on this XXC is so valuable. How does it ride? Overall, it rides great. When set up flush, normal everyday bumps and obstacles all but disappear. When set up for harder abuse, you can pretty much just send it as far as you want without any worry. I do have 2 thoughts about the suspension that I think need to be considered. First, 9 inches of travel, that's not blowing anybody's minds these days. Other vehicles that compete with the Outlander are putting up higher numbers. And second, we found the TTA rear suspension tends to bounce on hard hits. This design has gone away on Can-Am side-by-sides, and we don't think that's an accident. It's pretty hard to fault the XXC when it comes to handling. Tri-mode DPS can be adjusted to suit rider preference or conditions, and it does a great job of making steering effort light without hurting overall steering feel. A set of tapered, low-rise handlebars are wide and give the rider the option of an aggressive riding position when things heat up, or a more relaxed position when things are more chilled out. I've always felt really comfortable on Outlander ATVs. I feel like I'm sitting more in the vehicle than on top of it. I've always felt like I could ride as hard as I want without being uncomfortable. When a person buys an XXC, they expect to get a vehicle that can withstand the abuse a vehicle might suffer under the harshest racing conditions. Can-Am knows this and supplies this Outlander model with a full set of aluminum chassis and A-arm skid plates, as well as a burly front bumper, both aimed at protecting the ATV from just about anything you might want to throw at it or throw it at. Furthermore, what is quite possibly the very best stock tire and wheel package in the industry comes from the factory on the XXC package. Real 14-inch aluminum beadlock wheels not only look stylish and fully legit, but they make sure the bead of the equally as impressive 26-inch ITP Terracross tires never get peeled off, no matter how hard you try. If you did ever want to race though, this is the tire and wheel package you'd buy. The XXC just already comes with it. If all this leaves you thinking, This thing pretty much sounds exactly the same as the Renegade XXC. You're not wrong. If it all leaves you wondering why Can-Am would bother building both, there's actually a good reason. The Renegade has its place for guys who are more focused on sport riding, possibly even more likely to actually race their ATV at some point. The Outlander, while nearly mechanically identical, still includes decent mud protection and full-size front and rear racks. It really is the best choice for somebody who wants all the bells and whistles, all the flash and curb appeal, and all the performance and durability of a race-ready ATV, but doesn't want to sacrifice the usefulness and versatility of a utility model. Can you race a GNCC with the Outlander XXC? Yes, definitely, and we have done exactly that. But what makes this vehicle special is that it can satisfy all your racing fantasies without any real-world sacrifices, which is something we don't think any other ATV in the industry can do as well as this one.
Dirt Trax Television has been sponsored by Polaris, the world leader in off-road innovation, Can-Am, the ride says it all, and by Textron Off-Road, driven by the bold.
Thanks for watching this segment of Dirt Trax TV. For more great content, make sure you click the links or subscribe to our channel where we're always updating with new content every day throughout the week.